lived in Champlain Tower South. 136 units of retirees. Miami's zest, its eclectic mix, lived in Champlain Tower South. 136 units of retirees, Orthodox Jews, South American immigrants, snowbirds, and beach bums. A condo community until Thursday.
We have a lot of families that live there and a lot of friends that live there and family friends that live there. And what we saw from the beginning was a huge cloud of smoke, and it was by far the most horrific thing that I've seen.
Just after 1:30 in the morning, as residents slept, the 13-story tower partially collapsed. It groaned, buckled, folded in on itself, pancaking from the center out to its ocean-facing wing. Calamity. 55 units mounded in rubble and a cloud of white dust. Scores of people are still missing, likely entombed inside collapsed concrete and twisted steel. Most families of residents share the purgatory of not knowing, like Rachel and Kevin Spiegel.
I just want my mom. I want to go back a day and change everything.
65-year-old Judy Spiegel, a resident on the 6th floor, remains missing.
The hardest thing that we're going to do over the next day or two is tell Ray Scarlett about Grandma. That's the hardest thing.
In 12-hour shifts, search teams now fight fire, fatigue, the weight of the rubble, and the long odds of finding signs of life. Sinead Imbaro and Magnus, her search dog.
It's overwhelming a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on us because we want the outcome to be spectacular. We want
a miracle.
We want to find someone.
I'm standing a couple of blocks from the collapsed building. Just beyond that line of parked ambulances, you can see smoke. That smoke is from smoldering fires in the rubble. Just one of the obstacles search teams are up against. 15-year-old Jonah Handler survived, pulled to safety with the help of a passing dog walker. But his mother, 54-year-old Stacy Fang, died from trauma. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Right now, you wake up in the morning hoping that more and more people were pulled out, and that just news hasn't been what we had hoped.
In America, buildings just don't fall. Why this one did remains a mystery. The definitive cause could be months away. But in 2018, an engineering consultant reviewed Champlain Tower.
I want to stop this just for 1 second. Go back, go back, go back, go back, go back. All right. The building that you're seeing to the right of the building that fell is the sister to the building that fell. In other words, whenever building A went up, building B went up at the same time in the early 80s by the same contractor. You may be asking, well, Dennis, how come you're wanting to spend so much time on this pertaining to safety issues and pertaining to death and mayhem? I'm going to tell you why. This building right here, beside this building, is the building that my son put up. He poured the concrete in almost every ounce of flooring pertaining to this particular building that recently just went up. My son is on top of his game whenever it comes to safety issues towards not only protecting his own life, but protecting the interest of his company that he works for, which is one of the biggest in the planet, biggest in the United States, biggest, like I said, in the world. They have concrete construction industries all over the world, Europe, Canada, etc. I knew that my son had went to Canada towards doing a big project, but I didn't know that he had went down into the Miami district until just last night. Me and him was having a discussion about the building right beside that building is the building that he worked. He poured the concrete in that building. He knows all about the the safety regulations of what's supposed to be done, how it's supposed to be done. And whenever he sees something that isn't according to rules and regulations as far as codes to protect the interest of himself and the company that he works for and the lives of people, by and large, he has to stop the project just to figure out what is going on and why it's going on. Okay? He's involved in several other big projects. He's involved right now in a big project down in Memphis, Tennessee, multi-million-dollar projects. I think it's got something to do with Nike, to give you a brief idea about what he's doing down there. But it's nothing unusual for him to pour bridge spans. As a matter of fact, whenever he was out in Denver, Colorado, he built, I think in total, I don't know for sure how many buildings that he built, but he went as far as 44 floors, which is actually beyond the criteria of what his company likes, because they rather stay under 22 floors, because they claim anything above 22 floors gets into a whole new different concept of building rules and regulations. As long as you stay below 22 floors, basically you have the same dynamics and the same concept. This building right here is 12 floors. This building right here is 12 floors. This was the type of building that I was building myself in the early 80s on the other side of Florida, over by Tampa, towards putting up a hospital at that time. Since then, they have built on several different times. You keep in mind, all up and down through here is nothing but one skyscraper after another, high rises after high rises. And they're not what you would call skyscrapers like you see in Chicago or New York, because they have a better foundation to build off of. And because of it, they can go higher. Okay? But even by building on top of building, on top of building, up on top of building, you're still putting all this excess weight in this area right here, beachfront property, that ordinarily was not designed for that. This is all sifting sand, okay? We know for a fact that the ocean is rising. Every year it gets a little more, get a little higher, a little higher, a little higher, okay? This is affecting Florida. Matter of fact, some has projected that Florida is actually sinking. I want to back up in what I just stated about this particular building here being the building that my son built. He said last night that he built a building right beside this building. And it's either that building or this building or possibly this building. I don't know which. Because this, let me go back. This building right here is a sister to that building. It may have been this building, I don't know. But it was either this one, this one, this one, or that one. And if I was a betting person, I would say it would probably be that one right there. But I don't know for sure. But one of these buildings, right beside this catastrophe, he built. So let me back up in making the statement that I made about him actually building that particular building. Pouring the concrete in that particular building. Because he said it was right beside this particular building. Which could have been beside the sister building, which could have been this building. Or that building. Okay? He builds high skyscrapers. Big buildings. Big jobs. The concrete truck that he has cost about $3.5 million. He's got to go up into the cab of it towards taking several steps up just to be able to get to it. He's got 12-foot outriggers on the front, 12-foot outriggers on the back on both sides. He's got about a 270-foot boom. He can transport, listen to me, 12 to 15 full-size concrete trucks in his hopper while one is pulling out, the other one is dumping. While one is dumping, the other one is pulling out while another one's pulling in. He can transport between 12 and 15 full-size concrete trucks every hour on the hour and can maintain that every day. If it gives you any kind of idea towards what kind of operation that he runs. In the exchange of the education that I'm familiar with towards building these type of buildings, back years ago before I fell off the A.O. Smith building, which was approximately 4 floors, and I busted myself all up, and then I had to rejuvenate my life towards engineering into another occupation, which was the auto body industry for about 35 years. I am quite familiar with the tactics that they use in various areas towards construction habits, construction policies, construction tactics. And as I said before, I'll say again on another video, a lot of these fly-by-night construction outfits, they try to manipulate every safety guard that they can, because ultimately in the end the bottom line is how much money can you make from my company, regardless whether your company is involved in the electrician, your company is involved in the concrete, your company is involved in the drywall, your company is involved in the carpentry, your company is involved in electrical work. The bottom line is how much money can you make for my company? And that bottom line they look at. And if a subcontractor can get away by cutting corners and not doing stuff that he should do, that he knows that he should do, but because he's cutting that corner, it's saving days, it's saying hours, it's saying weeks, as far as labor time, you got to watch him very, very closely, because this is where various safety issues comes into play. OSHA, your general contractors, your people that's on point is supposed to be on those jobs towards watching everything that everybody's doing. That way they don't cut corners. A lot of times those issues get missed. A lot of times whenever they're bringing in the steel to build the actual skeleton before they actually start in doing other things, they'll bring in 3-4 truckloads, 18-wheeler loads of rebar and set them over to the side somewhere and not even cover them up with a tarp or nothing, and just let them sit there, sometimes for 3, 4, maybe 6 months before they're ever needed in a project of what the concrete people's going to be involved in. Why this material is sitting there openly exposed, it gets submerged with all kinds of salt water, all kinds of salt humidity, all kinds of salt dampness. If you've ever been to the ocean, you can feel that stinging in your eyes. It's not sand, it's salt. Salt that's coming off of the ocean. It's that way in any major waterway that is close to a seaborne ocean or sea. What we're finding out is that a lot of these companies that are using these rebar that are already rusted, the cancer has already done started on the rebar, that whenever you encase the rebar in concrete, now the rebar has nothing else. The cancer on the rebar, the rust on the rebar, has nothing else to adhere to other than the rebar itself. because it's not going to attack concrete. Rust does not attack concrete. It only attacks steel. So when you encase this steel, now you have superseded the ability of the cancer or the rust to the point that now this same rust that would have taken, let's say, a 1/4 inch rebar 25 years to deteriorate, now you've upped the ante because now you've encased it, and now there's nowhere else for the rust to eat on other than eating on itself and the remaining part of the steel that's encased. And now instead of it being X amount of years, you've upped the ante to some other part. This is all engineers and architects' safety issues that should have been addressed and looked at years and years ago, in which ordinarily whenever you're doing a government project, something that's humongously big, especially over a bridge, they do use more safety precautions in how they do that particular job towards encasing the rebar either in primer paint or some other type of substance that's kind of like a rubber mix. But if you don't watch, if you mix the wrong type of concrete with the wrong coating that you put around the rebar, the next thing you know, the concrete itself will attack the coating, which will cause another problem towards it breaking. So there's a lot of different dynamics involved in a building, regardless whether it's a building 22 stories high and lower, in which there's never a 13th story on any building. And if it is, it's because somebody's got a special key to it because of superstitious in the construction industry. After the 22nd floor, you get into a whole different dynamics of that building and how it sways, how it moves, how you're supposed to have various anchoring systems inside that building that will confiscate for the building shifting and moving to where you don't necessarily have to do that on a building that's 22 stories or below. It's kind of like taking a straw and standing it up and hitting the center of the straw, and all of a sudden it folds. Well, that's what you run into after you go above that 22 story level. Like I said, my son and me had a pretty in-depth conversation about this, and I'm not going to voluntarily expose the company that he works for, because I think out of privacy he deserves to maintain his privacy, even though he's my son and he's involved in this type of construction engineering feats like he is. But let's just listen to the rest of this program, because a lot of these older structures that was put up years and years ago was not governed under the same type of construction codes like they are today. And whenever you're building a building like this, it's supposed to be designed not to pancake on itself. It's supposed to be designed to where if there is a major defect, you won't see a complete total disaster or a collapse like we've recently just seen within the past 72 hours pertaining to what went on in the building that I was just pointing at a while ago. This building right here that had a wing on it that went way out, similar towards this building. See how this building right here, this is a sister to this building. So you got, this part right here, which is this part right here. And then the way that I see it, this part right here is also part of that part. I may be off a little bit. It may be this part. But what I'm saying is this building and this building was made and put up by the same contractor in the early 80s. And the contractor, about 3 or 4 years ago, was told about various things that was happening to the building. And I guess it was either overlooked or not paid close attention to. Well, now we see what has occurred, providing that this was not a terrorist attack. So far, there's not been any type of indication of it being a terrorist attack, even though it has similarities in looking at the Oklahoma building that was blown up versus this building that collapsed. They have a great deal of similarities. Let's listen to the rest of this, please.
In America, buildings just don't fall. Why this one did remains a mystery. The definitive cause could be months away. But in 2018, an engineering consultant reviewed Champlain Towers South. He found major structural damage. Inside the garage, pictures showed abundant cracking in the concrete columns, beams, and walls. Resident Jeanette Aguero noticed.
And it's a beautiful day, and you go, why am I stepping in a puddle of water to get to the car?
That 2018 review also found major structural damage below the pool and the tower's entrance drive. The consultant blamed a major error in the design of the waterproofing, and unless fixed, predicted deterioration to expand exponentially. Almost 3 years later, the tower's condo association was prepping for expensive repairs when the building fell. Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava.
We are obviously very interested in all of the evidence that's coming to light, and we're going to be including it in our what happens after the rescue.
Starting with a safety audit of buildings in Dade County, at least 40 years old or 5 stories and taller. And for all the families like the Spiegels.
We just want to be with our mom.
Rescue teams search for a miracle in Miami, the chance of another survivor.
Up here, success depends.
So sad.
In an asparagus field on the Oregon-Idaho border. 6,000 people
Really
showed
sad.
up on a Saturday.
Teen who was not ready to come out. That's ahead.
That the Etsy marketplace is amazingly agile. Whatever.
I agree with you. The compact between the police and the community has been broken, and it's been broken by people that are blaming the police for everything from racial inequality to crime in the streets to everything you can think of. The problem here is that there are very good and committed men and women who come to work every day with the sole aim to protect the community, even when they have to put themselves in danger. And to vilify that group of people is just unconscionable, especially when the real results of crime are the thousands of people that are being murdered this year needlessly.
And you must be very familiar with what this has done to morale in the police force.
I am. I speak to police officers across the country every day. I have police officers in my family, so I hear about this at the kitchen table. They feel demoralized. They feel as though they don't know what the public wants them to do. And the idea of proactive policing, which really drove a lot of our crime reductions, it is off the table right now. And I don't mean arresting a lot of people. I mean just being proactive and looking for crime that's about to happen, problem solving, stopping the things that lead to crime. That's what you can use police officers for, but they have been hobbled by what's happening over the last year.
I'm going to say this about what they're talking about right now because it's actually not on the same subject pertaining to safety issues in construction industry, pertaining to different codes at different places. Policing is probably one of the worst jobs that anybody can imagine, with working directly with or indirectly with human beings. And the reason why is because a lot of times they get involved in a no win-win situation, to the point that, you know, if a police officer has to arrest one particular person that's involved in a confrontation, you got 2 homes, one of the people has to go to jail of who initiated the problem, or you got a mother and a father that's arguing, or a boyfriend and a girlfriend. Policing is one of the most difficult jobs whenever it comes to working with society that probably ever, any out of all the occupations, that is probably one of the most dangerous and tedious jobs to have. There's no doubt that good men and women has to use bad tactics on bad people who are wanting to commit crime. And if they didn't use those type of tactics, ordinarily the person committing the crime is going to get away with the crime. You know, we would like for everything to be patty cake baker's man. Roll them up and put them in a pan. You would like for life to be that way. But we know in reality, life is not that way, especially since all this has occurred after COVID. And of course, now they're saying that there's another variant out there that's twice as aggressive. And whenever you put this type of stress on people, people are going to start doing things that ordinarily they wouldn't do. And because of it, the risk level has intensified. The dynamics of it has changed. It has gone from dangerous to dangerouser. And for the people to be saying anything remotely close that the way to solve the problem is by defunding the police departments is one of the craziest insanity things that I've ever heard of. Because that is not going to solve the problem by defunding the police. Putting stronger restrictions, gun reform, may quiet it down a little bit, but you keep in mind there is so many guns out there on the streets now, and it's so available for somebody to talk to somebody and buy let's say a 9mm Glock for $700 on the streets, which I don't know that you could buy a Glock right now for $700. It'd probably be more like $1,200, even on the black market. But let's say somebody wanted a gun and they had $1,200. All they got to do is talk to the right person, because whenever it comes to the underground black market, the illegal market, that's actually stronger right now than any known legal entity that we have going on, because there's so much corruption that's being shifted up underneath the tables. And until we get a hold on this, from the top to the bottom, from the inside to the out, and until we see a change in people's opinions and attitudes towards who we are and what we're supposed to be in the eyes of God, in the eyes of our Creator, in the eyes of one another, until we see a revolution, this thing is only going to continue to go backwards and get deeper and deeper and deeper, with all the violence and all the heartbreak that goes along with it. Once more, these are the things that right now we should not be experiencing as a society if certain politicians would have done the right thing in the late 80s and early 90s, beginning with the Reagans and the Bushes. We would not be experiencing what we're experiencing right now. A lot of people think, well, you're unfair, Dennis, because you're pointing your finger at certain people towards who's at fault. Well, it hadn't been the Windmill Ministries' fault, because we have tried to get the messages out there to the general public about this and that and that and this. Like I was telling an individual just yesterday that's my neighbor right here pretty close to where I live. I got my message out to the general public. I go, it costed me severely, not only monetarily, but also physically. It costed me as far as my family retaliating against me, my marriages breaking apart. It costed me. But I got my message into the church sector, in an unorthodox way. And he said, what do you mean by that, Juby? I said, well, it's like this. I had two choices. Choice number one is not to do nothing. Don't move upon what you feel like that God has called you to do. Choice number two was to move upon it, but how are you going to move upon it? Okay? I was forced to get my message out to the general public through the churches at the time whenever internet wasn't even really substantial at that time towards people communicating the way they do now pertaining to Twitter and Facebook and Angie's List and YouTube and etc. I was forced to have to use unorthodox tactics in getting my message through the back door versus the front door because I never could get nobody to listen to what I had to say. I never could get anybody to take me serious towards what was going on in my life. A matter of fact, everybody and their brother was trying to fight against me, beginning with the miracles that took place in my life, going all the way back into 1983 in a little town called Kenton, Tennessee, over in Obion County, Tennessee. I had all these different influences that was trying to settle me down, back down, shut up, you're to be seen and not heard. I even had people jeopardize my job because I was on a radio station up here in Union City, Tennessee back years ago. And I was given the ultimatum, you either shut up, get off the radio station, or go look for another job somewhere else. I had all these churches turn against me, even though they're supposed to love me in Christ, simply because they did not like the message coming from the messenger. It didn't have nothing to do with the messenger because I haven't had nothing to do with the majority of these people. But they have put out all these lies. Oh, whenever he gets in church, he's disruptive. Whenever he comes here, he done this. Whenever he comes there, he done that. Well, if that be the case, how come I haven't been arrested for all that stuff? For disturbing the peace. Besides that, there's a church right up here in Union City, Tennessee, that accommodates the retarded, that accommodates people with mental challenges. And every now and then you'll hear one of those holler out, or you'll hear one of them, like that. And it doesn't disrupt the service. They maintain the service just like they're supposed to. And they got people that's engaged in those people's lives in the back that takes care of those problems. In the meantime, the Word of God still comes forth. The message still comes out of the messenger, whoever's doing the preaching at that particular church. I'm not going to mention the church's name, but I actually I admire the church that's over there that takes the initiative towards wanting to help people with these type of challenges, because they understand that just because they've got problems that exceed what other people's problems are externally, we still all have problems. They may not be the same type of problems, and your problems may not be as obvious as somebody else's problems that has these type of problems pertaining to the retarded or the mental challenge, but people, by and large, all of us, still has problems. And the way that these community churches around here have banded me and basically ostracized me and treated me similar towards Martin Luther or other prophets of God that's come forth with a message that at that time society either didn't appreciate or didn't like, as far as I'm concerned, these are not real churches. These are not true churches. Whenever you go to a 12-step meeting, and because of the subject matter that you're talking about, you're no longer allowed to go back to that 12-step meeting. That is not a church 12-step meeting recovery shelter. That's something else that didn't meet the right criteria because I had a different opinion, a different outlook, a different testimony than everybody else's. Besides that, the lies that the people told on me was all untrue, because the conversation that I had with the individual was a one-on-one conversation after the group had already dispersed. So whenever I get to looking at, really analyzing and using a magnifying glass on all these different churches, there's only one church in Union City that hasn't been mean to me. I'm not going to mention their names, but every time that I walk in, they treat me just like I'm their own. There's a church in McKenzie that has not shunned me. They treat me as if I'm their own. There's a couple of the Mennonite churches around here that have been very good to me, towards that they didn't shun me, they didn't embarrass me, they didn't try to be mean to me. They went ahead and allowed for me to come in and sit down and be as any guest or any visitor in their services. And I'm sure to this day, I'm just as welcome in the church at Union City or the Mennonite Amish churches around here or the church up in McKenzie, because they know who I am. They know that I don't cause disruptions. They know that I'm not trying to take over the message in that particular setting or that particular group. Now you go down to Jackson, Tennessee, where they've talked about me, they would probably call the law on me just as soon as they identified that it was one of my automobiles pulling up into their parking lot. Even though I had never been to that particular religious body ever before, but because of all the yik-yak and the gossip, they have basically tried to destroy me by character assassination. Those are the things that I've went through just within the past 5 or 6 years since I moved back here to Northwest Tennessee in 2014, after I was pronounced as being disabled because of my physical and supposedly because of my mental state. I understand the physical part because of my injuries, but I don't understand the physical part. I mean, the mental part, because I've never been brutal. I've never been violent. I've never been one that wanted to dictate or dominate into somebody else's life. And the fact of the matter is, you've got just as much an obligation or responsibility towards either listening to me and agreeing to me, or not listening to me and not agreeing with me. And I've always kept it open that way, because that is the true gentlemanly message coming from the Lord. He doesn't force himself upon nobody. And of course, in my stance, he told me that if they won't accept you, shake the dust off your feet and move on. And that's exactly what I've been doing, regardless whether I was with this group, that group, a group over here, a group over there, in this state, that state, this county, that county. If they don't accept you, you move on. You don't aggravate them, don't agitate them. You know how they feel about you. They don't want to hear your message. Just like David Nelson down there, that goes to the Alamo Baptist Church that's less than 2 miles away from here. He told me, point blank, Juby, do not send me no more messages. Well, you don't have to tell me but once that I'm not welcome. Mr. Nelson down there never has to worry about me confronting him again, either digitally, electronically, or by mail, or on a telephone call, or me being cordial and stopping down there at his house, or even going to Alamo Baptist Church, as long as he's living and going there and he's a part of that church. He never has to worry about confronting Juby again, because he washed his hands of me. And as he was washing his hands of me, guess what I done to him? I washed my hands of him. And that's the way the true Christian is supposed to do it. You're not supposed to be forceful. You're not supposed to be ugly. You're not supposed to be demanding. You're supposed to do what you're asked to do. And if you're asked to do it and then you don't do it, guess who's in violation? You got it. So any and all these churches around here that has bad-mouthed me, put me on on a pedestal of being a monster, or put me on a pedestal of being somebody that's mentally challenged, or put me on a pedestal of somebody that was out here trying to some sort of a fame seeker, seeking some sort of a name for myself. It don't matter. Any of the lies that they have put out there, they do not have to worry about Juby ever coming to their parking lot, knocking on their door, and confronting them again. I even had a detective that got angry at me because I was sending him some material. I was texting him and sending him some material. He told me that he seen me as me being a liability and that I needed to get my head out of my ass and for me to quit contacting him again. I said, no problem. I even told his wife, you never have to worry about me ever knocking on your door, calling you, or confronting you ever again. About 2 weeks later, he apologizes. He calls me up while he's out in Kansas, working a case out there. Like I said, this is a detective. This is an investigator. He has long arms. He's bonded by a federal agency. I think he can work something like 13 or 14, 15 different states. He calls me up. Juby, I'm sorry, man. I shouldn't have talked to you the way that I talked to you. I said, well, sir, I've accepted your apology. I said, I accepted it before you ever even had to call me. But once more, he does not have to worry about me contacting him again, because he's the one that confronted me on the level that I was criminalizing him or abusing our relationship because I had put some material out there that he thought was either inappropriate or didn't like. The bottom line is this: it was okay for me to send material by texting him whenever he wanted me to send him certain pictures about stuff that he was interested in. But whenever it was stuff that I was interested in sharing with him, he didn't want to hear it. He's a very selfish person. And one day he'll find that out, and I hope that he finds it out in this lifetime before he has to find it out in another world that he's not going to be too happy in entering. But this man is very, very selfish, and as long as you do things according to him and according to his liking, he'll just be all over you. But now, as soon as you get just a little bit pushy, and you let him know, well, hey, this relationship goes both ways. It's give or take both ways. You know, I'm wanting you to listen to a little bit of what I got going on in my life, as well as you want me to listen to a little bit what's going on in your life. And as soon as I exposed that, he immediately got ill. He got not only ill, but he got ugly. Whenever you tell somebody that they're considered a liability, well, that's all you got to tell me. I'm through with you. I'm going to shake the dust off my feet, and I'm going to move on. Now, if he is very, very sincere, in which he may be, and he decides to want to call me and contact me again, either by phone or coming to my place, because he's already done been out here once. Once more, he's a detective. He's got that natural instinct towards wanting to be inquisitive about certain people. And if he wants to engulf in making sure that I understand that he is very, very, very sincere in apologizing to me, and that he wants to open up a brand new relationship in a more formal way, informal or formal way, towards give or take, then I might reconsider towards actually bonding back up with him. But as of right now, as far as I'm concerned, he's done. He's cooked his own goose. He has let me know his true cards, and because of it, I refuse to acknowledge him as a friend and call him or text him, because the next thing you know, he's liable to wind up turning on me again and trying to get me for stalking, or trying to get me for harassing, or trying to get me for whatever. Once you've showed your cards to me, You don't ordinarily have to show them twice. The people up in Kentucky that has showed their ugly side to me, they don't have to worry about showing their ugly side to me again. It's very obvious that they want to protect not only Satan, but they want to protect the works of Satan pertaining to rapes, murders, drug abuse, stealing, lying, whatever is defiling the very word of God. Obviously, the law enforcement agencies up there in Kentucky want to embrace that. Well, they don't have to worry about me going back up there bothering them again, because I know how they feel. And they don't want me involved in their lives. So let their own citizens figure them out and vote them out, if it hasn't been too late for the decent people up in Kentucky. I hate it for the decent people in Kentucky that are going through what they're going through, just like I hate it for the decent people here in Tennessee that are going through what they're going through because of the bad apples that has been spread abroad. I really do. I hate it. But once you've identified that if you beat on that door one more time, you got all kinds of consequences to have to suffer, guess what? If you're truly a servant of God, as Jesus said, to dust the dust off your feet and move on, you do just exactly what Christ said. And if you don't, you're asking for problems. You're asking to be incarcerated or punished again. Thanks again for listening to the Windmill Ministries. We appreciate everything that you consider, regardless whether it be for or against us. We don't necessarily like it when our critics criticize us, but we know that those are the things that people do generally, that we let slide off our back just like a duck, and we let people blow off their steam the way that they want to blow off their steam. In the meantime, you're definitely in our prayers. We definitely don't want to hold nothing against you personally. Those that do hate us and wants us to be destroyed or wants us to perish. In the meantime, let's pray for the people that has gone through such great suffering just within the past 72 hours down in the Miami district area. And let's continue to pray for each other. Good luck to all of us. And as we end our program every time, shalom. Shalom, and God bless you, and God bless those who are searching for a righteous way of life.